Modern Love, the podcast, is supported by
From the New York Times and WBUR Boston, this is Modern Love. Stories of love, loss, and redemption. I'm your host, Meghna Chakrabarty. When Victor Lodato moved to Ashland, Oregon, he expected to spend his days writing alone in his sublet apartment. But when he met his new neighbor, he was drawn into a friendship that was as deep and abiding as a love story. Actor Ali Fazal reads for us this week. He stars in the new movie Victoria and Abdul, and he reads Victor Lodato's essay, When Your Greatest Romance is a Friendship.
Is this your grandson? People sometimes ask Austin when she's out with me. I love watching her vanity prick up, the way she tilts her small white head and brings out her southern accent to correct them. No, honey, he's my friend. At this point, folks usually smile tightly and turn away, perhaps worried there's more than friendship going on between the old lady and the younger man seated at the bar or strolling through the supermarket, giggling like teenagers. Why we're giggling? I couldn't tell you. Often our mirth seems fueled by some deep delight at being together. Friendship, like its flashier cousin, love, can be wildly chemical, and like love, can happen in an instant. When I met Austin, I was not looking for a friend. I'd come alone to this small town to finish a book. So when a bony, blue-eyed stranger knocked on my door, introducing herself as the lady from across the way and wondering if I might like to come over and see her garden, maybe have a gin and tonic, I politely declined. Watching her walk away, though, in her velvet slip-ons and wrinkled blouse, I felt a strange pang. A slow pin of sadness that I suppose could best be described as loneliness. Suddenly I was dashing into the dirt road to say that I was sorry, that she had caught me in the middle of work, but that, yes, I would enjoy seeing her garden. Not the gin and tonic? Sure, that too, I answered, blushing. And before I could suggest a visit the next week, she said, "So I'll see you in a few hours then. Shall we say 4:30? I had to admire her sense of time. Next week is for someone who can afford to put things off. Austin, in her 80s, surely felt no such luxury. I liked your face, she admitted later, telling me she had spotted me at the mailbox. As she poured the gin, I told her I had also seen her at the mailbox, and I liked her face too. I wish I had better eyebrows, she said. They used to be fabulous. Her garden was astounding, like something dreamed rather than planted. A Mad Hatter Gothic in which a lawless grace prevailed. At dusk, the deer arrived, nibbling the crab apple blossoms. We had been talking for hours, slightly tipsy, and then we were in the kitchen cooking dinner. A retired psychologist, Austin had travelled extensively, spoke terrible Spanish and worse French, and was a painter now. She had had 2 husbands, the second of whom died in this house, in a small bed in the living room. That's what I'll do, Austin told me. This room gets the best light. We turned to the windows, but the light was already gone. That we could be quiet together so soon, and without strain, felt auspicious. So you run away from home, she said at one point. From the beginning, there was something about our interaction that reminded me of friendships from childhood, in which no question was off limits. Austin seemed afraid of nothing, least of all death. I said I was still afraid of the dark. Living alone, she said, can make you funny. I laughed, but changed the subject. telling her I would like to see her paintings. Later, crossing the road back to my sublet, I wondered what I was doing. I reminded myself of my plan, hiding out, staying in the dream of the book. I wasn't here to socialize. After years of work on a single project, I was in the final stretch. I could finish a draft in a few months, head back home. Besides, if I wanted a friend during my retreat, I would find someone my age to throw back beers with. Gin and tonics with an old lady in her garden, that wasn't in the plan. But there I was, the next weekend, having dinner with her. And then it was every weekend. Sometimes we went out to a restaurant or hiked in the mountains. Austin's older friends seemed confused. Is he helping you with the computer? One asked. When I first started talking about Austin to my own out-of-town friends, they assumed I'd found a new boyfriend. Austin's a woman, I would say. Besides, she's in her 80s. He's just a pal. Even as they replied, "That's cool," I could almost hear them thinking, must be slim pickings out there. What was confusing, I guess, was not that two people of such different ages had become friends, but that we had essentially become best friends. Others saw our devotion as either strange or quaint, like one of those unlikely animal friendships. A monkey and a pigeon, perhaps. If we made no sense from the outside, it didn't matter. We were mostly looking at each other. One night, Austin chatted about her life as a middle-aged wife in academia. "I completely missed out on the wildness of the 60s, she said. I told her I had missed out too. "You weren't born yet," she said. "Or hardly. Often we cooked together, as we had that first night, after which she would show me whatever painting she was working on. At her request, I also started reading to her from my book in progress. We gave each other feedback. Our work improved. When my 6-month lease was up, I renewed it. The novel wasn't finished. Plus, I couldn't imagine a better neighbor. Before I knew it, 3 years had passed. I was writing 7 days a week and spending most evenings with Austin. She had spells of vertigo now, and when we walked together, she held my arm. Often she couldn't find the right word for something. When she wanted to keep away visitors so she could paint, she hung a sign on her studio door. "Do not destroy." Soon the headaches came, and more jumbled language. "I need to screw my calls," she said, meaning she needed to screen them. We laughed, then sobered. Tests were scheduled. Now she's 8 months into what the doctor says a quick, ravaging illness deep in her brain. They say there is no stopping it. A year more if she's lucky. Even as I refuse to believe this, I prepare for it. How? By keeping my promise to her. A few months before her diagnosis, Austin had attended a wedding. She showed me a copy of the vows, which had been distributed at the ceremony, a detailed list. I read it carefully, at Austin's request. We were sitting in a car, waiting for our favorite Thai restaurant to open. "I never had anything like that with the men in my life," she said, pointing to the vows. "We loved each other, but we didn't have that." She was crying now, something she rarely did. I took her hand and said, "Well, you have it with me. Everything but the sex." At which point, the monkey kissed the pigeon. That night, I had an odd realization. Some of the greatest romances of my life have been friendships. And these friendships have been, in many ways, more mysterious than erotic love, more subtle, less selfish, more attuned to kindness. Of course, Austin was going to die long before I did. That's not what this is about. This, I have come to understand, is a love story. Austin continued to paint for several months more. Fractured, psychedelic self-portraits in scorching colors. Her best work. Lately, though, she is tired and hardly leaves the couch. I sit with her at the opposite end, our legs intertwined. "Read to me," she says. When I tell her the book is finished, she tells me to read her something new. But whenever I do, she promptly falls asleep. I don't leave, though. I stare out the window. Austin was right. This room does get the best light. Recently her hair has thinned, but she has a shock of white up front that a friend's daughter has dyed with a streak of fuchsia. She looks like some punk girl I might have dated in high school. She had a bit more energy the last time I came to visit and said, "Oh, Victor, I had the most wonderful dessert yesterday. Peaches and Connecticut. Have you ever had it?" "No," I said, smiling. I love the idea of it. Two things that don't seem to go together. Monkeys and pigeons. Peaches and Connecticut. Unlikely, yes, but delicious beyond measure.
Ali Fazal reading Victor Lodato's essay, When Your Greatest Romance is a Friendship. We'll catch up with Victor after the break. We're back. It's Modern Love, the podcast. I'm Meghna Chakrabarti. Austin passed away in December, before this Modern Love essay was published, but she had the chance to read it before she died. And in her last days, Victor said that she took the opportunity to share her feelings about him.
I remember her telling a friend when she could still talk that one of the things she was really worried about was me, because she knew how attached I was to her and how important she was in my life. And at the end, it was very soon before she died. She just took two fingers and she pointed them at me, and she did it several times, like 3 or 4 times. And I knew she was just saying, "You're going to be fine. I love you. I want you to be okay." So I felt like, at the end, we didn't talk much, but I think we both understood everything.
Victor gravitates towards solitude. As a writer, he spends a lot of time alone. But Austin pulled him out of that solitary world.
Anytime something good happened, I had a story published or an article published or some critic said something nice about my work, it was always an excuse to go out to a bar and have a drink and celebrate. And I realized that, one of the things Austin said to me, she said, living alone, it can make you strange. And I realized it's true, and I'm already strange enough, so she taught me to get out more.
Victor says that his relationship with Austin made him aware of how much friendships can be limited by age or socioeconomic status. And he thinks about that when he remembers their first meeting.
I really was attracted to her and liked her energy and wanted to have a drink with her. But, I was thinking, I probably had some thought in the back of my head, like, well, we're not going to become good friends because she's so much older than I am. And so I guess I faced my own prejudice that there was some sort of limitation there. So I hope that I'm less rigid in thinking that my friends will come from a certain segment of the population.
He's lost other important people in his life, his mother and his grandparents. But Victor says that losing Austin felt different.
I saw her every day up until the point she died, and so my body misses her. Still it does. I go to a certain coffee shop that I spent time with her, and I still expect to see her appear at the door and to join me. But because I spent so much time with her up until the moment she died, I have no regrets. I didn't take it for granted for 1 second.
Victor Lodato. He's a writer living in Ashland, Oregon. His new book is called Edgar and Lucy, a Novel. After the break, Daniel Jones on what he took from Victor's essay. Dan Jones, editor of Modern Love for the New York Times, says that when he first read Victor's essay, he was struck by the fact that when Austen and Victor met, Victor had all of his defenses up.
I know this to be true, that the people who put up the biggest walls at the beginning are the ones, they do it because they know they're susceptible. And I thought about that with Victor in this case. Like, he wants to do his work, he doesn't want to get involved, but he has a big heart and sinks deep into this platonic relationship, or I'd even call it a platonic romance, where they become each other's best friends.
Thanks again to Ali Fazal. He told us why he chose to read Victor's essay.
This one line really sticks with me. It says, there were no questions that were off limits. And it's that space of total nudity that I feel, once you cross that, the word intimacy just suddenly widens up. And it's huge, because it's not about friendship, it's not about love, it's just something very spiritual. You could be kissing or you could be not kissing. You could be sleeping, you could be not sleeping. You could be just reading. You could just be talking. And I think that's just beautiful.
Ali Fazal. You can see him now in the new film Victoria and Abdul. Coming up next week, Jake Gyllenhaal. He stars in the new movie Stronger, and he reads an essay about how desperately ill children teach a doctor how to recover from heartbreak.
I left just after sunrise, suitcase in hand, feeling as if I had just fallen from a moving train. It seemed unimaginable that I was meant to report for duty at the hospital in less than a month. My new employers were expecting a freshly minted physician, full of knowledge and an eagerness to heal. As it was, I could barely remember my name.
Modern Love is a production of the New York Times and WBUR, Boston's NPR station. It's produced, directed, and edited by Jessica Alpert, John Perotti, Amory Sievertson, and Caitlin O'Keefe. Additional sound design by Matt Reed. The idea for the Modern Love podcast was conceived by Lisa Tobin. Iris Adler is our executive producer. Daniel Jones is the editor of Modern Love for the New York Times and advisor to the show. Music for the podcast, courtesy of APM. You can always get more Modern Love on Facebook. Join the community at facebook.com/modernlove. I'm Meghna Chakrabarty. See you next week.